Jai to everyone. So in the lecture series of big data, in the previous lectures we have discussed regarding some basics knowledge about the big data. We have discussed what is data, and we have also discussed about the different eras of the data. But in today's series we will discuss about different kinds of big data. We will discuss regarding the formation of the big data, how we can have the measurement of these data. Further on we will see one by one about all these things. So coming on to a small quotation starting from the lecture, it says that the best way to predict your future is to create it. That means you want to predict your future, definitely for the creation of your future, you should have certain data. Of course, you should have the creation of that data. If you will create that data, definitely on the behalf of that data, you can create your own future. For example, I had discussed certain more examples previously in my lectures also. For the example, the weather forecasting is a very common example. For prediction, the weather forecasting for the coming days, we are only having the prediction on the behalf of the current data as well as the past data present previously, from the months, from the years, from the weeks, whatever the natural calamities is happening, or whatever the wind flowing is happening, all the parameters we are taking, and on the behalf of those parameters we are predicting the weather forecast. So definitely, so for creating the future, definitely for having the knowledge of the future, we have to create. For that creation, we need a data, we need a database, isn't it? So what is data? In computing, data is information that has been translated into a form that is efficient for movement or processing, isn't it? Definitely, data is a kind of an information. It's a kind of an information, that means a meaningful information that has been translated into a form that is efficient for movement or processing. It should not be a kind of a raw data which cannot be converted, which cannot be utilized. It should be in meaningful format. It doesn't mean some straightforward statements are mentioned which is a meaningless statement. No, it should be efficient enough to understand, to have certain results from that information, isn't it? So data can exist in a variety of forms as numbers or text on pieces of papers, as bits and bytes stored in electronic memory, or as facts stored in a person mind. Definitely, data can be in any format. It can be a text, it can be a video, it can be the image files, it may be in the bit, it may be in the byte, or it may be stored in the electronic memory of the systems also, and of course in the form of the person's mind. Talking about the person's mind, of course, you know very well about that our brain comprises of the neurons. There are a number of certain neurons present in our mind. And these neurons are having the storage of information. The memory, the power of a human having the holding in the mind itself. And the mind comprises of certain neurons. And of course, neurons are having the storage of those information which gives us certain results, which gives a certain outcome. For example, if I'll ask a question to you that what is the 10th percentage? You will frequently reply to me that my 10th percentage is that. Or if I simply ask, what is the percentage of BTech in your first semester? You will simply reply that I scored 80% or 85% in my first semester. But if I'll ask the same question in twisting way, that what is your percentage was in first class or in second class? Were you be able to remember? You may be remember, but most of the students, they will not remember that what they scored in nursery class or in KG class or in first class. They didn't remember because the memory, what we have stored in our memory, it doesn't store that kind of information. If we'll try to capture the information during that days, collecting the information, previously recalling the information, maybe we got that information that what was the result of our first class or second class. Similarly, if I'll ask the question, what is 5 cross 5? You will simply answer it is a 25 is my answer. But if I'll ask a question to you that on, for example, 17th of June, 2022, what you have taken in lunch? Would you be able to know? No, you will not be able to remember. You didn't remember what you have taken in the breakfast or in the lunch or in the dinner. But if I'll ask maybe this year or maybe the last month, if I'll ask on 26th January, what you have eaten on 26th January in the morning, you may remember because it's a holiday and certain planning you have done. So those information has been stored properly in your mind, and they are giving the certain information. So it depends on the person memory, the kind of information they want to store, the processing they want to do. Same thing of information transformation can be done by this data to get certain results itself. It's a kind of different concept, that is associative memory and heteroassociative memory. We will discuss in further lectures about that thing. But presently we're talking only about the data. That data we are storing in our mind, the data we are storing in our memory, the data we are storing in the systems, the data we are collecting in the text file, in the image file, in Excel file, in any kind of file. All this data is very, very much important. But remember that it should be a meaningful data, which is called your information. Remember, the meaningful information should be present. It should not be a non-meaningful information. It should be have a kind of a data which should give you the proper results, which should give you the proper outcomes. Isn't it? The storage unnecessary of data is just wasteful of the memory, is the wastage of the time of that person, and definitely no outcome will be coming out. So data, again I'm saying, it's an information that has been translated into a form that is efficient for movement or processing. Okay. Now what is big data? If I talk about a simple definition of a Wikipedia, it says that big data is a term for a collection of data sets so large and complex that it becomes difficult to process using on-hand database management tools or traditional data processing applications. So, of course, it's simply saying that it is a collection of different data sets, a large number of data sets, a huge number of data sets, which may be complex, which may be non-complex. Both the combinations of that data we are combining, we are collecting on a one side. But yes, as it's a big data, we are collecting a huge amount of data. It is tough to manage. It is tough to have the analysis on that data. It is becoming a bigger and bigger database. So for that management part, for handling that data, for producing certain results from that data, of course, we need a big data. Previously, it was a traditional way. We are storing the information on a single system. Previously, what happens is that the data is been generated by a single system, and that data has been used by different people nearby by you, isn't it? But what happens is that nowadays, of course, a system is there, a number of systems are there, number of peoples are there who are generating a huge amount of data, though that data has been used by number of peoples, number of companies. In fact, that data which you are producing is been used by certain companies, is been purchased by certain companies to know about the customers, to know about the sentiments of the customers, to know about the feelings of the customer, to know about the market demand of the customer. So for all these data is nowadays everywhere available. But the problem here is that how we can manage that data, how we can have the analysis of the data, how we can generate that data as per our problem statement. Isn't it? Whatever the problem statement we are having, we should have that kind of data which can give you the proper outcome of that problem statement. For example, yes, we have discussed about the weather forecasting. For the weather forecasting, if I take your name, your address, your roll number, it will not benefit me for giving me the outcome for the weather forecasting. The parameters for that will be different. It may be the humid, it may be the wind flowing, it may be the how much sunny time it is taking, and many more parameters for the weather forecasting is that, isn't it? It will not help me out by taking the details of the students or the details of any of the faculties for giving the prediction of a weather forecasting, isn't it? So, as per the problem statement, of course, we have to understand that what the parameters they have to be chosen, and it should be the information we are using, it should have the proper data by which we can have the proper analysis of that data, isn't it? So, the big data are having a certain challenges also. Of course, it includes the capturing, how we are capturing the data. For example, I am collecting the data from the Google Forms, I am collecting the data from the registers, I am collecting the data by simply having the group discussions, and there are a number of methods, the brainstorming sessions are there, and many more methods through which we can collect simply that data. So, how we are capturing that data, how much we can say that that data is accurate enough, how much we can say that it is efficient enough for our use, for the use of a sake, isn't it? So we have to, that is a big challenge for a big data, that how can we judge that which kind of data we are using is efficient, is giving the proper results to us or not. Fine. Next is the curation, of course, how much curation it is having, how much efficient it is having, of course. Next is the storage. Of course, the storage part is a very, very efficient part. How much amount of data we are taking? We are taking the 10 data, 20 data, thousands of, lakhs of, millions of, what kind of data we are taking and where we can store that data. Storage is a very, very big issue because it's a big data. Searching again is a big issue of a big data. I'll store that information. For example, if simply I'm talking about your email is having flooding of mails in your mail, and whenever you have to search your mail, you start searching by writing simply the keywords of that mail, you're trying to search, but you're still not able to identify that how we have saved that mail. So you are having your own setup, you are having your own email ID, and that only you are not able to search about your proper mail. So think about this big data. It has to search on a very, very huge part. It is a typical task for that. In seconds, in milliseconds, the big data has to repetitively give the answers and have to respond that. So it's a huge challenge for that how the searching is going to happen, how the searching process will be processed, and how how we can get frequently the information to be come out, by which the efficient and accurate results can come out. Fine. Sharing of the information is again a very, very big task. Of course, the sharing of the information, I am working on any of the data set, I am working on any of the problem statement, but yes, of course, I want to transfer that information to some of my colleagues also, isn't it? It is not only about my problem statement, it is a multidisciplinary problem statement also. It is a multidiscipline, isn't it? So it may be possible I want to transfer that information from my one company to some another company, or to some my branch to some other branch. So the sharing of the information, that means the information sharing should be in distributed fashion. It should be not only on a standalone application. It should be everywhere to be spreaded, everywhere, everyone can capture that information, everyone can utilize as per my need, as per to whomsoever I'm giving the access to that information. It should be easily done. The sharing should be done properly enough. Fine. Next is the transfer of information. Of course, transferring of the information is there. That the transferring of the information from one system to another should be easily accessible. It should not be like that I'm having using the text data, that that system cannot having the text format easily accessing. So the formatting, the different kind of file systems, it should not be like that. The whatever format I'm using, but the same format should be transferred to my colleagues, or to the people who are working on my project. Analysis is again a big task. We are doing the analysis on the behalf of the problem statement, and whatever we are analyzing, we don't know that after the analysis the result will be accurate enough or not, because it is depending on the parameters we are using, isn't it? Whatsoever parameters we are using, on the behalf of that we have to do the analysis, and doing the analysis whole soul by cleaning the data, because data of course itself is maybe having certain many issues. Maybe some missing data is there, maybe some duplicate data is there, maybe some repetitive data is there, maybe the parameters we are using, they are not proper enough for my problem statement, or maybe we are using the duplicate parameters for the same thing. So it may be an issue for the analysis part. It may be possible it gives the proper accuracy of data or not, isn't it? Next is your visualization. Of course, the visualization is the big data. We are confident that it is giving the proper solution for this problem statement, but how we are able to represent that data, only in the form of the table or only by verbal information? No, the presentation matters. Of course, the visualization part matters. Our human mind more captures through the images instead of the text, instead of the presentation, instead of the voice, isn't it? It more focuses on the images part. So the images, the visualization of the data is very much mandatory, is very much required, and it should be effective enough and efficient enough by which the big data can be easily be used, can be easily be give the proper outcomes, can easily be visualized, and of course the future perspective can be easily be declared and defined through this big data. Clear, everyone? So continued about same about the big data, the trend to larger data sets is due to the additional information derivable from analysis of a single large set of related data as compared to separate smaller sets with the same total amount of data, allowing correlations to be found to spot business trends, determine quality of research, prevent diseases, link legal citations, combat crime, and determine real-time roadways traffic conditions. So if we talk about the larger data set, of course, it is an issue because, of course, we are talking about the big data itself. और if अगर मैं बात करती हूँ, जैसे हमने बात करी कि I am collecting your information. For example, I am collecting your name, your roll number, your percentage of first semester, your second semester, your 12th percentage, your 10th percentage. I am taking. I am collecting your hobbies. I am collecting your whatever your interests are there. What are your research areas are there? What is your father name? What is your mother name? What your father do? What your mother do? So now, for example, my problem statement is to identify who are the weak students and who are the strong students. I want to simply do the categorization from my database. I am having 1,000 of students in my database. On the behalf of that database, I have to identify who are the weak students and who are the strong students. So for that part, of course, what I need is that I need a roll number of that student. I need a name of that student. I need the percentage. Maybe I'll take the first semester percentage, second semester percentage, or the 10th percentage, or the 12th percentage. But I will not take their hobbies, their research areas, their father name, their mother name, or what their father do, what their mother do. But may be possible for the future perspective if my problem statement changed from weak student, strong student to some other statement. For example, what are their hobbies by which I can inculcate those students in the cultural activities which are happening in my department. So for that part, I have to identify what are the hobbies of that student. So in that case, my problem statement will get changed. At that time, I'll need the name, the roll number, their hobbies, maybe their contact number also, maybe their email IDs also. So the parameters change, the parameter swings as per the problem statement. So that is why it's mentioned here. Additional information derivable from analysis form a single large set of related data as compared to separate smaller sets with the same total amount of data, allowing the correlation to be found. It may have certain correlation. It may be the weak correlation. It may be the strong correlation. That means a bonding should be there in that data set as per the problem statement. It may have we have to identify the quality of the research. We can have the linked legal citation. We can have the real-time roadways also, and many more things are there in the big data. So why data is important? At the end, it's mentioned here, data is the new gold. Data is the new gold. Why? Because data is a thing with the help of which we can do simply the future predictions. What we can predict of the future. It's a new gold of the new era, isn't it? Why so? Because data helps to make better decisions. Of course, more the data is, the decisions will be more accurate enough, isn't it? Data helps you solve the problems, of course, isn't it? Data helps you to understand the performance, of course. Data helps you to improve the processes, and data helps you to understand the consumers. So definitely the decisions are very much efficient enough to solving the problems. It is very much enough for the data to understand the performance of that data. It is a very, very important point. It improves the processes, and it of course understand the consumers. By understanding the consumers, the market value can be get raised. You can easily predict. For example, when the COVID scenario came into the picture, then of course through the market survey, through the data collected by the people, we came to know that the more sanitizers are required, the more masks are required, isn't it? So huge amount of development of the sanitizers and the masks are getting generated, and it is getting flooded off that. And the number of people have earned a huge money in that era, in the COVID era. So the consumer demand they have identified, and on the behalf of that identification, they have simply given the outcome for the production of the certain products which is required in that duration. Okay. So that is a simple example which I am declaring about a traditional way of storing that information. Traditionally, what happened is that the data was stored in registers, and it may possible, it may not. Of course, it happens generally that there is a certain errors while writing the values by the people. The entry may be by a single person, the entry may be by duplicate people, or the many people in the same registers, isn't it? So it may create a error, isn't it? So that is why it's simply representing the example of that. We are having certain signatures also there. We are having the thumb impression here itself also there. So that is a traditional way of the storage of information, which we cannot convert in a soft copy, or if we convert into that soft copy, that is again of course a time consuming process, a complex process to have thousands or millions of data at a single site. That is one more example of unstructured data. That is basically your the election, your voting data. The voter cards are there, and it is simply mentioned in the local language. And it may possible that they may have the replicative names. It may possible that they are having the replicative ages value. The age is different. The serial number may be different. So it is all the traditional way which creates certain errors. For example, I'm discussing the example for the same part also. I got a problem statement to know how many of the people in the area of Haridwar that they get vaccinated. The COVID vaccination has given to how many people get the vaccination for that. So I had sent a team in the Haridwar to identify that how much people get vaccinated. So they have taken certain papers and they started writing the name. They are having certain forms for that, and they started filling that information that who had certain done that, collecting that the information that how many people, who are the names of the people, what are the name of those people who have taken the COVID vaccination, their ages, their address, and all those things. Fine. Now, the one set of group have taken that information. They have came back to me. Another set of people have again went to their, they have given a certain different block, but some of the people again addressed to the same block, and they have collected the same information, but there itself. If we compared both the information, both the information were completely different. The ratio was very much far different. The first set was data was showing that the people who had vaccinated were around 2000 plus. Whereas the second set of data was showing was that only 100 plus people had taken the vaccination. Because it's a manual process, because it's a traditional process, we don't know that the people who are saying is the truth or not. And it may, this also happened that the people who died, their names were also mentioned in that list. I don't know how. So the manual process creates certain errors, certain issues. We cannot conclude that they can give us the effective solutions to the problems. So that is why the data in a soft copy, of course, in a soft material, data is a new oil. We need to find it, extract it, refine it, distribute it, and monetize it. Data is everywhere. Every kind of data is in registers, in text files, in systems, everywhere data is there. We have to collect it properly. We have to identify it properly, collect it properly, extract it properly, refine it properly, of course, then distribute as per the requirement, and we have to monetize it. After that, we can say that the data is useful data, it's a meaningful information, it's a complete knowledge for that. Now, there are basically three kinds of data, that is a structured data, unstructured data, and your semi-structured data. Now, talking about the first one, that is structured data, it's simply saying that the structured data is represented in the form of the table. Many of the students know about DBMS, that is database management systems, and our system stores the information in the form of the tables. The tables are having the columns and the rows, they are having certain parameters, and they are having the information about that parameters. So the storage of information in the structured way, in the table way, it is your structured data. We can easily see, we can easily check, we can easily identify, we can easily utilize this data. We are having no issues. It's the best data which we can use for our access, for our problem statement. Fine. Then next is your unstructured data. What is unstructured data? As the example is given here itself, unstructured data, it's mentioned here. The university has 5600 students. John ID is number 1. He is 18 years old and already holds a BSc degree. Now, David's ID is number 2. He is 31 years old and holds a PhD degree. Whereas, Robot's ID is number 3. He is 51 years old and also holds the same degree as David, a PhD degree. So, this is the data which is thrown randomly in a system. In a text format, in a sentences format, it is thrown. Can we easily use this data? For example, if I need only the ages of these people, or I want the number of people, I had mentioned the names of that. Can I collect that information from this kind of data? It is very much tough for me to collect that data. If it's a small amount of data, at that time I can simply count that data, or we can segregate that data by converting into table. But if this amount of data we are using, this kind of data we are using, it is very much typical process, complex process to have the solutions from this kind of data. So instead of this unstructured data, the more beneficial data is this structured data. So you can see that this unstructured data can be simply converted in the tabular form. For example, the first sentence mentioned is that John ID number is 1. He is 18 years old and already holds a BSc degree. Same thing is represented by this table. John ID is 1. He is the age of 18 years and he is holding the BSc degree. The same statement simply mentioned in the tabular representation. Similarly, the second one, David ID is a number 2. He is 31 years old and holds a PhD degree. Same thing in the tabular representation. David, whose serial ID is 2, whose age is 31, who holds a degree of the PhD. Similarly, talking about the next one, it's mentioned here, robot ID is number 3. He is 51 years old and also holds the same degree as David. So that is what's mentioned here. The robot, it as having the ID of 3 and it is having the age of 51 and having the degree of the PhD. That means we can simply have the representation of that data from here itself, that is the unstructured data to the structured data. So you can easily see that if you use only this kind of data, this unstructured data, the system cannot be able to understand that data, isn't it? So for that part, we have to do the conversion in the form of the structured data. But yes, nowadays we can use these kinds of data also. That is the combination of both the data is your semi-structured data. Semi-structured data means we are having the combination of these two data. It is somewhat semi-structured. Semi-structured means we are having the segregations of that data. For example, if I talk about this, the university has 5,600 students present in that. That means the university, the student ID is equivalent to 1. It is simply segregating that data, isn't it? The name, the John, the name and the age, it's mentioned 18. Similarly, it's the degree, it's mentioned here. So that is this a single database of a single student. So you can see that this unstructured data, these sentences may be converted into semi-structured data, and this semi-structured data can be converted into your structured data, isn't it? The formation says, sorry, the formation says that we have to use all these kinds of data: unstructured data, semi-structured data and structured data. So this is all about the basics of the big data. In this class, we have discussed about different kinds of data. In the next class, we will discuss about the different categories of the big data. Thank you so much.